Alright, let's talk about Father Abraham, or as he was earlier called, Abram. And as his friends called him, Abe. Now, Abe was an asshole. No, Abe was a pimp. Abe was a pimp, and for those of you who don't realize this, we'll read from Genesis chapter 12, verse 13. Please say that you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that I may remain alive thanks to you. So what Abe is telling his wife, Sarah, his half-sister, so it's not really a lie, which we read later, but you can read it. I ain't fucking reading the whole goddamn thing. Anyhow, she was told by her husband / half-brother to go fuck the king. Okay? Go fuck the king. And why would you want to fuck the king? Well, there's lots of reasons for that. And you got to realize this is a different time, okay? It wouldn't be normal for a man and wife to go to another land and say, King, fuck my wife, she's my sister. Because, well, we don't marry our sisters as much as we used to, except for, of course, the Israelites who make it their law. And we're going to slag the Israelites today, by the way. We're going to slag them real good because they need a good slagging. Anyway, we'll read on. And because, verse 16, and because of her it went well with Abram. He acquired sheep, oxen, asses, male and female slaves, she-asses, and camels. Okay? Now, you might wonder, why couldn't a king afford to have a slut that was just a little bit... No, slut's not the right word. I don't want to say anything bad about Sarah, because, I mean, it was her role to pretend that she's a sister so that she could get, for her husband, lots and lots of things. Because there's nothing worse than having a husband that has to work as a goddamn bartender. And Abe didn't want to work as a bartender, so he whored his wife out, Sarah, and collected all these things. Now, of course, after she had been there for a while and she was pregnant, then the king didn't want her anymore, so it was normal to say, okay, this is your wife, get the bitch out of here. And that's kind of what, that's how language works. You don't say things directly. And when you read this book that people like to say holy, you have to remember that it was written thousands of years ago by men who wanted to write a story. And the story is a story, and you have to read the story as a story and understand what a story is. So it helps to read 100 stories, or 1,000, and maybe write a few. And once you get to understand this story, you realize that Abe was a pimp. He whored his sister wife out for the sheep, the oxen, and the slaves, and then he could start himself a good life. And with this little bit of wealth, which was very small for the king, but a lot for Abraham, who had nothing except, I mean, his history of being a Hebrew, which is a very good thing to be if you're believe in this chosen race thing, because he was the chosen man to be the man of everything, at least for idiots. Anyhow, Abraham was very rich now with gold, silver, and did it say gold the first time? But he had gold. He got gold. She must have been good. Sarah must have been very beautiful. She might have even been a virgin. Now, this is something a lot of people don't understand, is that it was quite common for a king to have the first child of everything. That was sort of a priestly thing as well, which quite often meant not that the king would want to sacrifice your first child, the king would want to have your first child. And this was quite likely the case with Abraham, and Isaac was not his son. I mean, he was raised as his son, but he was financed by the Lord, whatever his fucking name was, of Egypt. And this could be part of the reason why Abraham had such an animosity towards Isaac and wanted to murder him, okay? So what kind of a man do we got? He's a pimp and a son murderer. Okay, it's not really his blood son, but if you adopt somebody from childbirth, I mean, the problem was they had so much pride, and he knew that eventually somebody was going to realize that his son was the Lord's son, or the Lord would be the Lord of Egypt at the time. And we're going to take a small break and come back with some other kind of bullshit. So what's Abe do with his newfound fortune that he collected from whoring out his sister wife? He sets up camp and a tribe, and he starts warring. Of course, he doesn't do any of this before he takes a she-goat and a he-goat and a me-goat and a pig and a whatever. Oh no, they didn't do pigs. But anyway, he cut the animals in two, half in two, with blood dripping everywhere and flowing everywhere. I mean, everything they do from Abraham down through till today is got to do with blood. You slice something open, you splash blood here, you splash blood here. Moses was famous for splashing blood everywhere, toes, nose, and earlobe, and penis, and over the house, over the animals. Blood, blood, blood everywhere, okay? The Israelites are blood mad, and they're also glutton mad for meaning. Meaning, of course, doesn't matter what. You just make it up as you go along, and that's what they were famous for. And our first big meaning, of course, was Abraham. And Abraham went around being warlord. And there's most famous one was where he beat the shit out of whoever was in Sodom and Gomorrah before Sodom and Gomorrah was wiped out. But I think Sodom and Gomorrah might get wiped out from Abe and his fucking tribe, but it doesn't matter. Okay, we're sick and tired of talking about Abe. He was a pimp, he was an asshole, and there's no real reason to worship Abe. And every bloody religion in the West, Christianity, Muslimism, and Judaism, all think that Abe was some kind of a special great guy. But no, he was just an ordinary pimp. And not even a nice pimp. I mean, there's pimps who take professional women and help them do their thing. I mean, some of them are bastards. But they don't have to be bastards. But Abe whored out his own sister, who was his wife. Now, it might not have been a bad idea, because that way, I mean, there's no way to prove that the king had made her pregnant, but there's a very good chance that he wouldn't have given the silver, gold, and everything else, because it was his idea, the king's idea, that his son should have a chance, and that his numbers, of course, would populate the planet, and every king wants to have his sperm and as many females as possible, so that it's quite likely that his sperm will rule over the world, and that's what kings are all about, is sperm maniacs.